Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome, students. Good evening, students. Welcome to the first interactive session on the course Urban Utilities Planning. So we have received a few questions from you, and during the course of the this particular this interactive session, you can also let us know a few other questions that you want to ask us. So I have along with me two of my teaching assistants, Niyata Balan and Deepa Sharma, and they will help me with the questions. They will put forward the questions that has been either forwarded to you earlier, and we would like to have some discussion on that. And in the meantime, if you want to, you can also put in some questions in the chat box. And today we will be discussing about the first 4 modules. And if there are any questions from modules beyond that, maybe 5 or module number 6, 5 I think is open now. So in that particular case, you can we will cover that in the next interactive session. Okay. So can I request Niyata to put forward the different questions?
Yes, sir. So the first question is, water supply and management falls under the duty of state subjects. Will a community-centric approach increase the effectiveness of water management? Are there any examples or best practices?
Okay, water supply is basically a state subject. Yes, of course, it's there are different aspects of water supply. For example, whenever we are talking about water supply, getting water from the different surface water body, treating it, it cannot be done at a very small level. It has to be done at the urban level. And that is why it's a state subject. And at the same time, what we can do is, we have also talked about this dual pipe system, where maybe we are not it's not only the treated water that we are going to use, but there is direct rainwater that we can capture that could be used for certain purposes. For example, watering our lawns or cleaning our cars, or maybe recharging the local area, right? So it's not only the water supplied by the municipal corporation or extracted from the groundwater, which is available at a particular area. It's also the water that could be captured in that area from rainfall. Instead of allowing it to go as runoff, we can actually capture some of it and use some of it. So that's why water management could be done at the community level, and that actually is effective, because if you do a basic calculation where you can determine that, okay, this is the size of my roof in square meters or square foot, and then you multiply with the total rainfall, that is in millimeter, you will get the total volume of water that you will capture from a roof itself. And if you see, that is it's a huge amount of water. It's not something you may be able to cover around 100 days of water supply or requirement of water in your household. So it's quite a bit of water, and that's why water management at the community level is also effective. And if I think about recharge, if I think about retention of water and all these things, then obviously we should start at the community level. I hope this answers your question. Okay. What is the next question?
Yes, sir. The second question is, the different methods of population projection have been discussed. Which of these methods can be used for a more realistic estimation in the Indian context?
I think there are several methods that we have discussed. We have talked about incremental method, we have talked about geometric method, but these are basically part of the arithmetic methods. Then there are economic methods as well. Now, we end with something called a cohort analysis, right? And that is where we go into a lot of details, where we find out different, not only overall male or female population, but we really take into account a population belonging to different age groups, right? So in that sense, why it is important? Because different age groups have got different, like for example, women belonging to different age groups, the fertility rate is different, right? So we need to do realistic calculations, and when we do projections using this, then we are also able to capture not only the gender, but also not only the overall population, but also the number of people in each gender and age group, and how that will transition over a period of time. And that is important for determining a lot of issues. For example, how much, maybe not directly for water supply and sanitation, but it may be important in determining how many people, how many students will go to schools, how many colleges are required, and so on, because different age groups have got different requirements, right? So always a detailed calculation is important. Now, the question is, sometimes we do not have so much amount of data, like every age group wise mortality rate or every age group wise fertility rate. Those data is not available. So sometimes we take average values, and sometimes we go for other methods as well. Now, which method is most suitable for India? Actually, it depends on for what purpose you are doing the work and for which location you are doing the work. If the purpose is to just have a very basic understanding of what kind of population growth will happen, I may not go out into the cohort analysis method. But similarly, if I am working in an area where there is very rapid change, that means a lot of economic growth is happening, many new people are coming from outside. So in that case, we need to understand not only the birth rate and death rate of particular area, that is fertility and mortality, but also you will like to understand how many people are migrating in and how many people are migrating out. So that is where this migration data is also important, and this sort of economic methods could be utilized. But this, frankly speaking, this linear method or geometric method or incremental method, this could be applied in where we want to do a rapid assessment, and also where the more or less the urban area is stable, and we know that there is not much change in economic development, there is not much change in the land use. In that case, we can actually stick to the this very basic methods. So it depends for what purpose you require and for which area you're doing, depending on both, and like characteristics of the area, you have to choose the right method for that area. So there is no hard or fast rule for that. But it is it's the planner should judge, or an urban planner should make that judgment call which one method should be suitable for his purpose. Okay. What other questions? Any other questions?
Yes, sir. Could you please explain the mass curve method of obtaining the minimum storage reservoir capacity, both analytical and graphical method?
Graphical, I can try to explain. I think we have explained it in the lectures in much detail. But I think the one confusion that usually people have is whenever we are trying to understand reservoir capacity, reservoir is there are different purposes why we construct a reservoir. We want to determine what is the balancing storage. That means what amount of there is all water supply coming in, and there is consumption of water. So what amount of water should be always in reserve, so that there is never a shortage of water, right? So the method is, frankly, if I go with the practical assumption, we can say that we can store 12 hours of water or 24 hours of water, and that would be good enough, because every day using pumps, we can fill up the overhead tank, and whatever water is required for the entire day is stored. But suppose the capacity is not for a small building, it's for a very large case. In that particular case, we need to make sure that the size of the reservoir is as small as possible. So in that case, we probably will look into something called a mass curve method. Now, what we do over there is we understand, we try to plot the cumulative amount of water that is being pumped into this particular overhead reservoir, that is the water coming in. So, and then we also determine the cumulative outflow of water from that particular reservoir. So when there is cumulative, whenever we are plotting this cumulative inflow and outflow of water, automatically there will be certain situations when the amount of water that is coming in probably is higher. So that means we have to store this excess water. But sometimes it's just the reverse. That means the amount of consumption is more. So that means I need to keep that amount of water stored, which will take care of that gap. So actually, in both cases, we have to store water. And so that's why we take a addition of these two sequences whenever there is the when there is a during this particular this inflow and outflow, there is a time when there is excess water and when there is a time when there is less water, right? So during these two time periods, we will determine what is the maximum gap between the cumulative inflow and outflow from both these periods, and then we will add that date and add that value, and then we will get the overall storage capacity of a particular reservoir. Now, how to do it graphically and how to do it, using some basic tables and all, it's simple. Means every hour you can calculate how much water is coming in and how much water is being consumed, or you can do it every 15 minutes, doesn't matter. So either you can plot it on a, in a graph paper, and you can plot the cumulative inflow and outflow, and accordingly you can find the maximum ordinates of the deficit time period and the excess time period. You can do it that way, or you can actually just per hour wise, you can make a table and determine that you can calculate the cumulative values as well. And then you can determine at which hour there is a maximum difference between this inflow and outflow during the excess period as well as the deficit period. And then you can add this two up. So both ways you can do it. I think this has been elaborated in detail, but I think that actually, may take care of, may explain a little bit. Maybe this is a little bit more explanation. All right. What else?
Yes, sir. We have our next question regarding water supply graph from David Gray and Claudia W. Sadoff. What causes the flattening of the curve with further investment in water security and planning, as in case of developing countries?
Okay, when we are talking about water security, in case of both developed and developing countries, doesn't matter. Means water security is required for all countries, and what it means is, like for example, whenever we have very little infrastructure, that means whatever rainfall comes to the ground, it flows away in form of runoff, right? So that means we are not able to capture it, or maybe in some amount of capturing is done, but other infrastructure is not present so that we can actually send the captured water to the different places where it is required, right? So maybe when we look from the point of view of irrigation, that means there is a need for a dam, and then there is a need for a canal system to distribute that water to the different agricultural areas so that there is agricultural growth can take place. And when this happens, automatically economic growth takes place. If the agricultural fields get water all throughout the year, automatically the growth would be good. You may have multiple crops instead of one crop. You can have two crops, right, throughout the year. So that will actually improve the economy of that particular place, right? So that means a poor country, the problem is construction of a dam. This requires huge amount of money. Then construction of a canal system. Poor countries cannot immediately invest a lot of money in this, or they may do one river system, then they can take another river system. They cannot invest so much money to do all river systems together. But gradually, if you keep on investing, you will see that initially, even though the effects of this construction or this water infrastructure creation is not giving you that much returns, but more mature this infrastructure becomes, you will start getting returns. And you will start getting returns from both your irrigation or the agricultural sector. Even in urban sector, the more better water you provide, like for example, in India, the water that we receive, in many places we can drink it, but directly from the tap water, but in many places we can't. That means we fit another purifying system in our house and then drink water. So if I improve the water quality, what the direct benefit is, the amount of diseases, that waterborne diseases that arises out of poor water quality, that will reduce. That means that people will be able to go to work for a more number of days. They will not be spending that much amount of money on medicine, and overall well-being of the person would be higher, right? So that means the more gradually, the more investment we do, more would be the returns. And initially from provision of, first we will try to provide the water, that means make sure that water is available. Then we should make sure that adequate water is available for everybody, or then we should make sure good quality of water is available, and then very good quality of water is available. But there is a point beyond which, even if you are investing, there may not be much returns. That means you have already achieved a certain amount of quality of water and quantity of water which is adequate for that area, and maybe you have also done the infrastructure for doing adequate recharge so that the supply of water becomes sustainable. That means there is no depletion of groundwater and so on. So all this investment actually will see that your economic growth will happen, but at one point of time, obviously there is no further requirement of water infrastructure, and more or less your economic growth will be stable. So that is why eventually the curve flattens. That means we don't see too much benefit, even though we may keep on investing more money, but it will not give us too much benefit. All right. So any other questions?
Yes, sir. Among the various hydrological models, such as empirical models, physically based models, and conceptual models, which represent the best real situation, what are the factors determining model selection?
Actually, the models, when we have talked about this, we have, that means, I think we have referred to this in module, in the initial classes, right? So the more advanced the lectures would become, you will see that we are referring to different kinds of models, right? So some of the models, like, whenever water, whenever we are talking about water, that means the flow, it could be about the flow of water. It could be about the movement of water below ground, above ground, or it could be about basic estimation of water and so on. So for different purposes, we require different kinds of models. But at the same time, if you see that we are actually planners, so we would be concerned about what kind of water consumption is important for us, particularly in module 2, we have discussed that there certain volume of water is required for every human being, and this volume is not fixed. Right now, we may be happy, there is very lack of dearth of water in a particular urban area. So little quantity of, if you can ensure, if the government ensures that there is adequate water available, at least to a certain amount, which is which gives the basic, satisfies the basic requirements, then people would be happy. Right? but in future, with more infrastructure as well as more economic affluence of the people, they may be consuming more amount of water. So that means there is a relationship between affluence as well as consumption of water. That means if you buy a car, obviously you will use water to clean it. Or if you have a building with a lawn, then you will of course require water to water that lawn. So that means this kind of requirement is there, and with affluence it changes. So that means if I keep on considering the fixed value of water, like so much liters per capita per day, like 135 liters per capita per day is the requirement, then probably I will predict the overall water demand to be wrong, right? Because there are rich people, there are poor people, each requiring different kinds of water. And if a city has got a lot of rich people, definitely the consumption of the city will be also higher. This is one. The other is during different seasons, we have different requirements of water. So sometimes this could be, again, we can determine the average values from previous years, and we can use that, or we can do some prediction or empirical models for predicting what kind of water is required in different seasons, accordingly do adjustment in the provision or the supply of water, right? So these are one kind of models which are utilized. Then there are models which actually talk about how groundwater flows in the soil, how it goes between the different layers. So this is where it is not a statistical, it doesn't depend on statistical characteristics of that data or observations that we have in a particular area. It's not like if I go to a depth of a certain underground, then I will see that the rate of the change in the speed of water or the flow of water changes, right? So, and if I go another similar depth below, then uniformly the rate changes. It may not be, because there are so many other things which influences this change of flow. The more you go underground, right? There are other things which influences this. So that means this is where the physical models, the physical properties of soil and other phenomena comes in. So this is where we are not going to use empirical models. Probably a different kind of model would be utilized. So this is how we determine what sort of model is required. And again, like we are urban planners, we are not concerned too much about determining the physical phenomena, or conducting experiments of flow and all. For those, there have been a lot of research which has been done. We usually adopt those kind of figures to determine eventually what kind of quantity of water we can derive out of ground, or groundwater, what kind of water we can get from, what kind of water we have to transport along via channel. So this would be the kind of estimates that we need to do. All right. Any further questions?
Yes, sir. Now, roads which are supposed to serve as escape routes during flood events itself get flooded, and cuts of areas completely during flood events. Now, what are the considerations to be taken by the planners or engineers to tackle this situation during the design phase and post-construction?
I think we will discuss in detail how to determine the extent of flooding, or to do flood modeling of floods in the subsequent lectures, which would be at the end. But just to give you a brief idea, yes, roads are designed to capture the water from the surrounding areas, but roads are also designed with, we use this underground sewerage network along with the roads, so that the water captured through the roads could be immediately transported to those sewerage networks or this drainage network. So that means the road design should be such so that the number of inlets to this sewerage network, so that would be adequate, so that the water that comes to the road within a amount of time would be able to move into this drainage network. But that doesn't happen, because either in many cases the roads, the drainage network is not properly designed, or maybe it is choked, or maybe the capacity or the size of the drainage pipelines are not adequate. That is why we see the water stagnating on the road or flowing along the road, because there is always a slope. Water will flow wherever there is a slope, in whichever direction there is a slope. And in many cases, and of course, it gets stagnated where, where the slope is from multiple or many direction, there the water will get stagnated, right? So that's why we see that during rainy season, there is stagnation of water in certain section. And in other times, when there is heavy rainfall continuously happening, then water flow starts flowing, and then it comes to the streets, because usually streets are lower than the surrounding areas, and then flows along the street. So that means it's not only the streets that is at fault, or rather streets are not at fault. Streets are designed to collect water and then channelize the water into the sewerage network. Probably that is where we are lacking. So that's why we see our roads are getting flooded, and our drainage, and that means we don't either have the drainage infrastructure, or maybe the drainage infrastructure is choked or inadequate. All right. Any further questions?
Yes, sir. While calculating the population projection with geometric and incremental methods, do we need to consider value of initial population from first known year or last known year? Final projected population has a vast difference from putting either of these values. So which one is more preferable?
Actually, the first, whenever we are doing any kind of projection, suppose it's an incremental method, and what we have seen that there are two components in an incremental method. One component looks into the average increase every year, and the other looks into the increase in that increase, right? So what it does is, if you do it based on, suppose you've got 5 years of data, right? 5 decades of data. If you just take the last decade's data and you start to project, then what happens? Then you will just use only 2 data points, and you will get an average increase between these 2 data points. And you increase, but again, you will not get an increase because there are only 2 data points. If you take 3 data points, you will get only 1, 2 increase, direct increase, and 2 increase of increase, and 1 increase of increase. So the problem is, the more, if you feel that, it again depends on the situation in that area. If that area was not growing at all, but suddenly because of influx of new industry, there is change, some changes are happening, which is happening for the last 10, 15 or 20 years, right? So in that case, it's better to start with the last 20 years data, because that will be more, if I use that data to predict today's population, it will probably be appropriate. But if I see that there is not much change in the area and so on, probably it is better to take a longer period. That means we should start from the beginning, so that we can capture the trend to the fullest extent, right? So that means it's always better to take a larger data set, like you can start from the beginning itself, but it depends. If there is a change in the characteristics of the area in recent years or so on, then probably we have to be careful about that. All right. But general understanding is, you should start from the beginning, not only take the last values. Then probably you will only reflect whatever calculations you're doing. It is just an extension of the previous decade. We are not going to take into consideration all the previous growth in the previous decades as well. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. So there is a query from assignment question that says whether the incremental increasing method solving process is right or not. Like, they want to get an idea about that process.
Yeah, I think the method that we have shown is fine. I think there is no problem in that. But I think, is it about a specific solution that has been shown in some assignment or something, or is it related to the course itself?
It's a question from the assignment.
No,
I think
that is fine, but I think we need to, if that particular student can actually point out what he's referring to, then it would be easier. Because is he talking about the assignment question, or is he talking about that text or the theory that we have that's in the lecture? So I think we can, you can, I mean, whoever has put out that question, you can just send us an email and we will try to clarify directly. All right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So any further questions?
So we have a few questions from the comment box.
Okay.
Shall I read it, sir?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So the first one is, what are the challenges and opportunities towards water-sensitive, sustainable cities in India? The next part of the question is there any Indian city where initiatives have been taken on ground? If yes, what are those initiations?
Yeah, I think water sensitive, sustainable cities or water sensitive cities are the need of the day. And with climate change and this, the kind of rainfall that we are witnessing, or these extreme events that we are witnessing, there is a need to plan for, this kind of extreme weather events, as well as we need to also think about water availability in a particular urban area, water management in an urban area. And that is where we have to make sure that proper recharges are happening. Then we are able to retain the water. We are not able to, or not only retain, but detain the water, right? So all these things are important. Now, the challenges and opportunities, yes. One big challenge in India is the space. That means our cities are very, very congested. To find the space for providing this green infrastructure, I think that's the biggest challenge. But at the same time, there are most Indian cities have got parks, and we can always design certain other infrastructure like plantations or certain kind of canal systems and all, which we can develop further, which would be able to not only improve the this water sustainability of the water infrastructure, or rather introduce green infrastructure for urban areas. So I think these are the challenges and opportunities you can say that you are talking about. And if is there any Indian city where initiative have been taken? Yes, I think I have discussed about the Jal Shakti mission. So it's a recent initiative by the government, and the government is really putting focus, or this is a focus area for the current government. And this groundwater, in Jal Shakti Abhijan, the government has actually just a minute. The government has actually determined that because some of the blocks and all, there is water scarcity, and we need to rejuvenate those blocks and all. So in that case, there are certain measures the government has proposed. For example, rainwater harvesting is the main measure. And along with rainwater harvesting, the government is also talking about renovating traditional water bodies which are already there, but because of neglect, those has been partially filled by garbage, or just it has dried up over a period of time. So these are the different things, measures governments are willing to take, or rather they are taking a lot of measures in this regard. And then there is some reuse and recharge structures, traditional things that were there, but now people have now forgotten about those. So the government is trying to revive those, and also afforestation as well. So these are the different measures government is taking under the Jal Shakti Abhijan. And within this program, particularly the southern states, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Pondicherry, and all these places, this kind of efforts have been taken. Not only there, and government has selected several water challenge districts, I think around 250 of them, and then they have tried to introduce these measures to the current administration, and I think it is progressing well. And there has been a lot of, and there is also a ranking system for this particular district, which you can check, and then which district is taking what kind of measures, and people are actually taking those measures, and several and thousands of initiatives are being taken. So that actually answers your last question as well. What are those initiations? So I think you can check the Jal Shakti Abhijan website, as well as you can do a basic Google search on Jal Shakti Abhijan. You can get which are the districts where this kind of efforts are being put in, and what kind of efforts as well. All right. Okay. What other question? Anything else?
So one more question is there.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you think that achieving water sensitive city would make the city sustainable in a holistic manner through enhancement of other urban planning features or components of the city?
I think so. Its general understanding is there is a limited quantity of land that is available in urban area, and there is a demand for that land by different functions. If I only consider the economic, the activities, probably that's not the right way to plan for our urban areas. So if it's only the economic activity, obviously people will not bother about wetlands. People will not bother about large plantations or parks. People will do constructions and do more buildings and so on. So that is where we have to be careful. That means we have to balance our land use in terms of both the green areas. Nowadays, we have to introduce the green infrastructure. That means functional green areas, which are not only aesthetically pleasing, but also functionally, those would be areas which help in achieving this water sensitive or water sustainability. And that is what we should target. And we need to find the right balance, because if you look into the urban land use planning, you will find that when we talk about transportation, then we talk about transit oriented development, more compact development. But compact development, fine, that actually helps in reducing trip lengths and number of trips and so on. But at the same time, if it is compact development continuously, right, throughout the city, then probably we will end up with a lot of built up area, contiguous built up area, and that will lead to a lot of runoff generation and flooding. So that means we can have compact development, but but in certain pockets, not everywhere. And in between, we can introduce a lot of green areas and other green infrastructure, which can take care of this water. It would be able to recharge those particular areas. It would be nice areas where people can enjoy, go enjoy those particular places. Plus, it would be functional during rainy season, and it would be able to both retain and retain water in those particular areas. So we have to balance the requirements, and we have to design a city which is both efficient in terms of transportation, economic development, as well as water, water drainage, as well as water supply, you can say as well. Right? Any further questions?
No, sir, that is it.
Okay, so I think that's all, because there are not too many questions today. Probably today is a holiday, that's why our session date. So we will, there is no issues with that. We can always, we will have another 2 sessions after this. So in subsequent sessions, if required, people can also add up some more questions from the previous sessions. So I think we will end our session today over here. Thank you. Thank you all.